Well, I don't think it's anything. We're entitled to sit here, any of us, and start saying anybody is having it easy in the poorer parts of our country. That's not the point. The point is whether they are being given the sort of help they really need. I don't think that compassion should necessarily be expressed by throwing money at these people. I think that Eric Pickles probably feels the same way, but because this government is in effect a fraud, which makes conservative statements and does no conservative things, nothing will come of this. But I think that his general idea that what we need to do is to look at the reasons why we have so many problem families, which are fundamentally the destruction of the married family by the deliberate subsidizing of fatherless families and an enormous welfare-dependent class, then we might be able to do some good. But it doesn't do any good being rude to people, except politicians who deserve it. It doesn't do any good being rude to people who are at the bottom end of society. Many of them are acting perfectly rationally. If you create an enormous welfare state, people will obviously go and collect the welfare which is offered to them, and they will behave in the way which the welfare state persuades them to do. That's why we're in such a mess. But until we get serious welfare reform aimed at bringing back the solid family life which people used to enjoy in this country and which used to be particularly good for the upbringing of children, then these problems will persist. And I just think Eric Pickles is showing off and pretending to be a conservative without actually being one, and offending people without doing any good.
You, sir?
I find it quite amazing that we're focusing on welfare when the recent study found that that chief executives in the FTSE 100 companies have increased their salaries by an average of 12%. Surely if that money was redistributed, there'll be less people on welfare and more people being able to get off welfare and get jobs and be able to cope better in the recession.
Well, no, if the money were redistributed, there'd be more people on welfare, wouldn't there? Because there'd be more money to spend on it.
In terms of what? In terms of chief executive pay?
Emily,
before I came along today, I was advised to do, yoga, deep breathing, and to make sure I didn't get wound up by Peter Hitchens. But I just have already, and we're only on the second question. I suppose that given that my family that I was brought up in was fatherless, and I suppose the fact that my mother was on benefits and we lived in a council estate means that we were one of the problem families that you talk about, Peter. But actually, do you know what? We had a solid family life and we did well, and me and my brothers did well, and my mum struggled. And how dare you say that women, single parents on council estates living on benefits are therefore by definition problem families? How dare you?
Well,
how dare you?
Well, had I said any such thing, your phony outrage would be justified. But as I didn't, it isn't. And you really do need to do a bit better than
I made a note.
Yes.
I made a note. You talked about problem families being fatherless, and you talked about them being on benefits. And that describes the family life. That describes me as a child. And we were not a problem family.
It's a subject under discussion. I didn't say anything about your family or anything of the kind. You're just engaging in phony outrage.
I am not
for political propaganda
outrage.
purposes, which is what your party always does.
The woman there in the grey dress.
Pathetic rubbish.